Thanks for the invitation. I feel honored to take this opportunity to share my research with the colleagues and friends of the Network of Asian Environmental Philosophy. Since the late 20th century, atmosphere has gone beyond meteorology and psychiatry and become a philosophical concept. In the philosophical sense, atmosphere refers to a sphere jointly constructed by perceiver and perceived, in which human sensibility, spatiality, and environmental properties are emotionally integrated. Since 1969, Hermann Schmidt, the founder of the German New Phenomenology, has focused on integrating the concept of atmosphere into his philosophical reflection on emotion, in contrast to conventional European thought, which considered emotion as purely psychological state. For Hermann Schmidt, emotion transcends subjective boundary and manifests a spatially outpouring atmosphere. In his opinion, although subjective correlation is precondition for atmospheric perception, objectivities play a more crucial role. Accordingly, atmosphere exhibits a quasi-objective characteristic. For example, churches, shopping malls, restaurants, or hospitals have specific atmospheres. That's the general idea of Hermann Schmidt. It was Gannett Böhme who paved the way for today's one in the aesthetic studies of atmosphere. In the 1990s, Böhme drew on the concept of atmosphere from Schmidt's new phenomenology and combined it with Heidegger's concept of disposedness, namely Befindlichkeit. On this basis, Böhme redefined aesthetics as aisthetics, namely the theory of sensuality in a broad sense. Here, sensuality is to be understood fundamentally in the sense of feeling oneself in environment, which offers a new understanding of aesthetics in the context of contemporary environmental movement. According to Böhme, atmosphere is a pervasive phenomenon that has a profound influence on our life experience. In contrast to Hermann Schmidt, who understand atmosphere as a quasi-objective, free-floating phenomenon, Böhme describes atmosphere as in between the perceiver and the perceived. On the one hand, atmosphere contains objectively identifiable features like form, light, color, sound, and smell. On the other hand, atmosphere is inherently dependent on our bodily perception, whether conscious or unconscious. According to this, atmosphere refers to a perceptual reality co-constructed through our bodily presence. Thus, with the discussion of in-between, Böhme added a new category to the philosophical study of atmosphere. Essentially, atmosphere emphasizes the intertwining of the perceiver and the perceived. Here, the decisive question is, in what kind of environment are we situated, and in what way do we experience and respond to the qualities emitted from the environment and the things in order to enhance human well-being? Therefore, the aesthetics of atmosphere would trigger a reconsideration of the scopes and limits of Western epistemological terms like concept, judgment, reflection, and insight, which are more associated with substance or entity and tend to presuppose a critical distance between subject and object, and thus promote the transformation of philosophical methodology from the conventional ontological and or epistemological world to a phenomenological and anthropological half. In European discussions, atmosphere is explored at three levels, namely physical, climatic, social, and in the media. Correspondingly, the study has been carried out in literature, media, film, theater, architecture, design, pedagogy, politics, management, psychiatry, and even economic psychology. The omnipresence of atmosphere has even inspired the Italian scholar Tonino Grifero to develop a project entitled Atmospheriology, whose mission is to clarify the ontological, epistemological, medial, social, and aesthetic dimensions of atmospheres. Meanwhile, the complexity and diversity of atmospheric generation and experience advocate non-Western perspectives that approach this concept in different contexts and thus open up horizons for aesthetic phenomena that embody the East Asia traditions. In recent years, scholars dedicated to the aesthetics of atmosphere from the East Asia perspective include Kenichi Sasaki, Akita Kao, Tadashi Ogawa, Peng Feng, Yuho Hisayama, Yu Qingteng, and I. The subjects covered include philosophy, nature, poetry, prose, painting, architecture, gardening, and more. Furthermore, there have been several exchanges between European and East Asia on the theory of atmospheres, including guest lectures by Gernot Böhme and conferences such as the 9th International Congress of Oriental Aesthetics in 2019. In this way, not only have terminological difficulties in translations been discovered, but also consonances with the relevant thinking of traditional Far East philosophies. Such exchanges would thus further open up perspectives of transforming phenomena of cultural diffusion into fruitful intercultural dialogues. Based on the research so far, I'd like to focus on three characteristics of atmospheric aesthetics in East Asia. First one, qi and the driving force of atmosphere. In Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, atmosphere can be translated into the following words: qi fen, fu wei qi, fu wei gi, fu nu gi. In modern Japanese and Korean, as in English, atmosphere refers to both meteorological phenomena and a mode pervading our environment or situation. In modern Chinese, however, atmosphere means only the latter, whose approach is largely based on body phenomenology. For atmosphere in the meteorological sense, a corresponding Chinese translation is not qi fen but da qi. Obviously, all the translations of atmosphere in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean include the word qi. As one of the fundamental concepts in East Asia philosophy, qi has multiple meanings and complex features in its development. Qi has no direct equivalent in the history of European philosophy. It should not be equated with the substance or material in the sense of modern physics, but refers to an invisible life energy permeating all beings and things within the cosmic system. The Chinese scholar Huang Yiming gives the following concise interpretation of qi. I quote, "Qi is not only the basic element that constitutes all things, but also represents the subtlest and most fluid substance in nature. So it is also the kinetic energy of all things. As far as human body and mind are concerned, qi is the basis of human emotions. Emotions are the externalization of qi, and the basis behind the change of human emotions is the change of qi. Emotions and qi together constitute the content of life and even of human nature. Since the development of qi affects all things in the universe, various social phenomena, and even the generation and changes of human body and mind, the law of all things, Tao, is actually the law of qi." End quote. Qi is not visual, but atmospheric. Therefore, the philosophy of qi attaches great priority to the felt body. Meanwhile, the invisible bodily feeling and the visible corporal movement are considered to be inseparable from each other, in particular due to the fact that both of them are permeated by qi energy. The artistic forms in East Asia, like ink painting, calligraphy, and Tai Chi, are actually art of Qi. Through harmonization of Qi, perception, and corpus, such artistic practices can nourish life and thus slow down the aging process. As an ancient doctrine of geomancy in the Far East, Feng Shui has to some extent mysterious ritual features. Aside from this, Feng Shui is a living art which is based on the principles of Qi, Yin, Yang, 5 elements, 8 trigrams, 5 animals, and 5 directions. The literal translation of Feng Shui is wind and water. Since the wind is essentially something atmospheric, Feng Shui is related to the characteristic of the landscape, which is perceived as spatially radiating atmosphere. Correspondingly, the art of Feng Shui essentially deals with atmospheres. It assumes that the design of living spaces should serve to sense a harmonious atmosphere. In this context, a harmonious atmosphere means that the invisible Qi energy flows smoothly through animate and inanimate beings, so that our body and mind are in harmony with natural and artificial environmental factors. In the current Western debate, atmospheric phenomena are primarily recognized as space-like, bodiless, radiating powers. Spatiality here means that atmosphere is perceived as a space into which one can enter. The spatiality of atmosphere is not static, but characterized by a dynamic development, emergence, strengthening, weakening, and disappearance. For instance, the French scholar Jean-Paul Tillibaud examines the temporal dynamic characteristic of atmospheric space. In his view, atmospheric space is not stable and changeless at all, but rather a dynamic process undergoing different phases, each of which leads to the next. In this sense, the temporal dimension is embedded in spatiality. On the contrary, in East Asia philosophical tradition, it is generally accepted that there is no absolutely stable order in the world, and everything is an instant renewal, whether it is visible or invisible. In this context, temporality in the atmospheric experience demonstrates priority over spatiality, while spatiality rather represents a fleeting moment from a continuously changing process of the world. On this basis, a moment sensory dimension is brought to the fore in East Asian arts. According to Rolf Eberfeld, calligraphy and painting of East Asia are basically an art of movement, explains, I quote, what is seen as an image in calligraphy passes directly into a movement sensory experience. In the art of painting too, these dimensions above all must flow together to achieve the corresponding aesthetic quality, end quote. With alternating brush strokes, the sensation of movement is transferred to paper and illustrated, which creates highly dynamic atmospheric forces and effects. The priority of temporality over spatiality is represented in Japan and China through Wabi Sabi and E, respectively. Wabi Sabi is essentially influenced by Zen Buddhism. Latin Captain explains, I quote, Wabi Sabi is closely related to the kind of beauty that reminds us of the impermanence of our life. This can be traced back to the 3 characteristics of existence in Buddhism, namely Mujo, Ku, and Ku. End quote. For this reason, Japanese people usually show a positive attitude towards bad conditions, as shown in Hokusai's The Great Wave of Kanagawa. Connected with this is a view of existential philosophy. Adverse weather events reflect the finiteness and transience of all moments of life. The transience of the world and the frailty of man usually lead to the pessimistic mood. On the contrary, under the influence of Wabi Sabi, one must seek courage and comfort in similar phenomena of the natural world. The concept "yi" can be traced back to the classical work I Ching. According to it, the world is one great continuum of life containing endless modifications. Yi refers to a continuous transformation that ensures the continuation and constant renewal of life. Such a worldview exerted a significant influence on Chinese aesthetic practices. For this reason, Chinese artists place less emphasis on depicting good weather conditions, such as clear skies and bright sunshine. Instead, diffuse atmosphere of adverse weather processes, such as rain, snow, fog, and haze, are preferred to reveal something that fuses natural conditions and human bodily spiritual existence into oneness. Here, the blurred outlines of objects in bad weather better characterize the process of the world. Everything is an interaction between emptiness and fullness, formlessness and form, invisibility and visibility, absence and presence. In this sense, Chinese image representation offers an atmospheric approach to illustrate a general cosmological metaphysical meaning. This approach is particularly evident in Guoxi's work, Early Spring. Through the interrupting function of the clouds in the painting, the mountain landscape appears as both emerging and submerging, and thus exudes an atmosphere that is fascinating, inexhaustible, and seemingly endless. Ultimately, life and movement are brought to the forefront of aesthetic experience. The aesthetic investigation of atmosphere has been developed within the aesthetics, namely the general theory of sensory perception. Wolfgang Welsch wrote, I quote, "I'd like to understand aesthetics more generally as aesthetics, as the thematization of perceptions of all kinds, sensual and spiritual, everyday and sublime, life, word, and art." End quote. In this sense, aesthetics is no longer limited to traditional Western art genres such as painting, literature, music, theater, film, and dance, but goes far beyond these fields into other cultural areas not usually considered as aesthetic, such as interior design, leisure activities, fashion, and food. On this basis, atmospheric aesthetics challenges the art-centered approach of Western aesthetics by focusing on the interrelationship between art and non-art. This new research shows a connection to the East Asian tradition, in which the intertwining of artistic and everyday atmospheres is an essential feature of aesthetics. In Chinese tradition, everyday activities such as calligraphy, painting, theater playing, go game, and archery are essentially considered aesthetics. In Japan, the everydayization of art is primarily manifested in Gido, which refers to people concretely living in the everyday world as well as their moral ways of life. As a result, such practices are aesthetically highly appreciated. In European philosophical history, craftsmanship was underestimated. Design, for example, has only been developed as a philosophical term since the 20th century. To this, the Bauhaus in Germany contributed significantly. In contrast, in Japanese tradition, for the most part, there's no hierarchical difference between high art and craftsmanship. Kenichi Sasaki explained, I quote, "Craftsmanship was translated into Japanese as gongyi, which is limited to the traditional fields such as porcelain, furniture, metalwork, dyeing, etc. Modern Japanese aestheticians attach importance to Gongyi because, in my opinion, before the modernization, there had been no such concept as the modern Western art, so that there was no essential difference between high art and Gongyi in the code. Finally, please let me draw your attention to information about a conference Zhejiang University and Guangxi University for Nationalities will organize an online conference on aesthetics of atmosphere in intercultural perspective on September 16 to 17, 2022. Professor Wang Jie and I are the organizers of this event. Our goal is to enhance the diversity of international discussion on atmosphere. As Wang Jie introduced, so far we have received many high-quality proposals from more than 10 countries and regions. Scholars from East Asia, including China, will also present their ideas and approaches to atmosphere from the perspective of aesthetics and art. We welcome all interested colleagues and friends to join our discussion.